the leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
It got up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Attention Patriots! Red Nation Rising Radio is about to begin.
Please return your Republic to its original position and prepare for takeoff.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Here we go. Welcome to Red Nation Rising Radio. It is the reddest hour on radio, and we are so glad to have you. I'm Lou.
And I'm Jared. Thanks for coming out tonight.
And we are just so glad you're here. So it's your show, and usually I say enter your questions in the chat room, which we do want you to do, but we're going to do something a little bit different with the chat room tonight, and hopefully you're all going to love it. But we still want to get your questions when the time comes for Kelvin Smythe, author of The End of Prejudice. He's also a bit of an activist, I understand, and we'll talk to him about that, and he'll explain that to us a little bit. But first, we want to talk a little bit about what you guys have been talking about. There's been a lot of things to talk about this week. Some of them started happening earlier in the week, and some of them kind of came up in the last 24 hours, which it seemed a little bit like old news recycled, but it's something. There was a little bit of an additional ad on there with Miss Lois, and one of them's been hanging around for a while. So let's get to the one that started at the first of the week. Hillary's server. It's almost like I don't know, Lindbergh's baby at this point. I don't even like to make that analogy. But the thing that got me this week, Jared, this is a little bit of your area of expertise, so I want to ask you. Her email server, and she's the Secretary of State of the United States of America, and her email server had no SSL certificate.
Right. I mean, you find very few websites that don't have that, and when you have a server, just for the sake of security, if you have a home server, I mean, you can't sit in your house with a server without that layer and expect
it's like not locking your door, right?
Exactly. And we've had people say that, John Kerry thinks the Russians have been reading his email. Just imagine what they got off of her server, all over the world.
Exactly. So, chat room, hey, chime in. Tell us what you think about Hillary's server. We know where it is now. It's been turned over.
Probably scrubbed most of the important stuff.
I've actually watched, I'm not going to say what industry I was in at the time. It wasn't nonprofit, I will say that. But I have actually watched the FBI, and this was years ago when they didn't have the technology they have now, pull emails out of thin air. I don't know where they got them, but
yeah,
you think it's scrubbed.
You can have they could isolate certain areas of it, but you can pull a hard drive out of the ocean, you can pull it out of a fire, and if it's an old style spinning disk, HDD hard drive, they can pull a sector off of that and get 10,000 emails off an inch sector off of a hard disk. So,
and I think I agree with Jim that somebody's got that information. Yeah, somebody's got that information. The other thing is Lois Lerner. Wow, man, we found out today that she doesn't really like Republicans. What a surprise.
That's news.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, total shocker there.
Yeah, so Lois doesn't like you if you're a Republican. And forget 9/11, forget Hurricane Sandy, forget the Civil War even. Citizens United was the worst thing. Sound off, chat room. Citizens United was the worst thing that ever happened to this country. Now, she's said that before. They actually have emails, I believe, with her making that comment, or she's made that comment in public. I've heard that attributed to her before, so that's no surprise that she feels that way. But really...
How does she feel about Mr. Soros? It's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum for financing, parts of a political party.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's if you want to talk about unfair treatment, the organizations on the left certainly get more latitude to do what they want to do than the ones on the right. And when the ones on the right begin to start to organize, then we have a problem, right?
Well, sure.
I think we might be talking to Kelvin. Go ahead.
Well, the ones on the left will pour money into race riots to further their agenda, as we've seen with Ferguson.
With the divisiveness, and we're less likely to be divisive. When you really find a true conservative, because they're just not the divisive type. But I think that might be on our list of topics with Kelvin tonight, which will be awesome. The other thing we want you to sound off in the chat room about is the Donald and Fox News. And I want you guys to explain to me, tell me, do you love Fox News? Do you hate Fox News? Are you just completely ambiguous about Fox News? Is it just another news station? If you hate them, why? If you don't hate them, why? Well, tell us how you feel, because this is a huge issue, Jared.
Yeah, it is. I'm sure the chat room is going to light up with responses on that. Everyone has an opinion, and it'll be great to see what our listeners think. I have my opinion. I'm not even going to bother sharing it. But, I hope everyone gives their opinion. And Kelvin is on
definitely.
The line. He just called in, so if you want to cut to break whenever you're ready, we'll welcome him on the air. Just give me
you guys keep sounding off in the chat room. We're going to cut to break real quick, and we're going to come back with Kelvin Smythe. So we'll see you in a couple minutes.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of liberty conservative, where no one is safe and no one is spared.
not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring
right round.
Ebola
Anyway.
radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote. Just do your rant. Let's pop out of the segment.
Has to do with
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
We are today facing a full-fledged constitutional crisis. The answer is not a monarch from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down.
All right, we're back, and we are here with Kelvin Smythe. Kelvin, how are you doing?
Hey, Lou, how's it going?
Good, very good. So, I'm pronouncing your name right, or no?
Yeah, you are, actually. Perfect.
Yay.
Just the way it's spelled.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, that's what I thought, but sometimes you just never know, and having an Italian name, I don't take anything for granted, right? So, we're so glad to have you, and I just want to say before we get started, we live our lives on Twitter, so your handle is at Kelvin Smythe, which is KelvinSmythe, and somebody's probably going to drop that in the chat room for you guys, so you can follow him.
I'm in there a little bit, too, so if you just stick my two first and last name together, you'll find me on Twitter. And thanks to Jared and company, a lot of people have already followed me over the last week or two.
Well, that's wonderful. We hope that maybe they picked it up from our radio promotion. That would be great. So do you have a web? I saw you drop a blamefox.com URL in the chat room. Do you have a website you want to call out? I know you want to talk about your book.
Sure. Well, that's not exactly the official website I'd like to promote, but if you click on it, you might get a laugh out of it. But, yeah, basically, if you debate with a liberal, they'll tell you that the source of any problem on Earth is George Bush, Fox News, or the Koch brothers. So that is a website just to sort of help people keep track. But the book is called The End of Prejudice, and the URL for the book is just endofprejudice.com. Just the way it would sound spelled out.
That's great, and you'd present a problem, and from a historical perspective, but you also present a solution. What led you to write the book? What was your impetus? What was your passion there?
Well, I mean, I was involved in politics for a long time, and I think that, like a lot of us, we're sort of looking at all of these problems from our vantage point. And we're looking at elections and issues and arguments and ideas from a particular point of view. And we're going into battle sort of, armed with whatever weaponry we have, and we're trying to defeat the enemy. And I was doing that for a long time. And then I quit because just things weren't working. And, for a lot of us, we can't be involved with politics professionally, even though we love it, or love/hate, or whatever you want to call it. But, after I hung it up, I wasn't paying it very close attention, but I was able to sort of start to see the bigger patterns start to come into focus. And one day it kind of just hit me, and I was like, oh, okay, this is how they think. This is how it works. This is why it kind of makes sense, why liberal ideology exists. So I was sort of able to see what the world looks like from their point of view, and that's when I decided I wanted to write a book about it.
Well, that's great. When I was in school, we would do these things called the opposition series, and you have a book from each point of view. And the theory is that you really don't understand your opponent's argument or your own argument until you understand the argument of your opponent or of the other side. And that's kind of the approach you've taken here, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm not particularly empathetic to their side in the book, as it will please the listeners to hear. But yeah, I was able to sort of feel like I could step into their shoes a little bit, or at least, I mean, I don't even know if they completely understand what they're thinking about it. But yeah, I do kind of frame things from their point of view, definitely for the first half of the book, because, you know, it's two halves. It's like what they think and then what we think, and then how to kind of like connect them together so it makes sense for us, most importantly.
Right. So that, yes, and I definitely get what you're coming from. So just give us that's a general idea of the book. Give us a little more, a little more to go on about, what is that way of thinking? Yeah.
Well, have you read much of it or looked at it at all? Or I know Jared gave it a start, and I just figured I'd see how much explaining I need to do before I explain myself.
I read a summary, but this is your opportunity to talk about your book, and I wish that I had time, but there wasn't enough time. I don't read that fast. Honestly, I'll just be honest with you. I just don't read that fast, but this is your opportunity to tell us about it from your point of view.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, when I wrote it myself, I came into it with my background and what I felt I had discovered. But, just recently I came across a concept that would probably make it a little more understandable for people listening for the first time. And you could look at the concept of Marxism, which is theoretically supposed to be some kind of economic system that helps, make everyone the same. And if you study Marxism a little bit, what you'll see is that it's just based on resentment. And it's based on resentment based on economic classes. And the solution for the Marxists is to get really angry and overthrow the people who are more advantaged. So if you take that concept and apply it to every single other cultural phenomenon in society, that's kind of where you get the underlying philosophy of liberalism, the underlying ideology. And what I was able to do was to see how they divide people into all of these different social groups and come to the conclusion that some of them are more advantaged, and some are more disadvantaged. And then that's sort of where they poke the wedge in between people in terms of politics. And I know that might not sound like a huge revelation to people, but people are still, like a lot of people on the right, still look at this political schism in terms of what we think, as opposed to looking at this bigger overarching idea of cultural Marxism, quote unquote, which is the concept that I found more recently, which I think people could sort of relate to if you just put it to them in those terms. What I call it in the book is the big guys and the little guys, dividing people into groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And it had different words, 100 years ago, they were, peasants and czars, but you're right. And we have other guests, Dr. Randy Arrington that come on and talk about those things. So there are so many people. My husband was telling me tonight, but people don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention. Do you find that to be the case?
Which people?
Your average people. Your people that aren't necessarily ideologically, they are ideologically on the right, but they just don't even realize it.
I suppose you could say they're not paying attention. That's a hard thing to gauge, Look, this election is particularly interesting because of all the wild cards that are happening. I don't know how engaged the average person is. I'm most interested in talking to people who are firmly in our camp, because I find that a lot of them just don't know how to confront what the left are doing. That it's all just purely... Go ahead.
You think that makes them resistant or reluctant to do it? To confront the...
I don't think they're doing it in the right way. I don't think, like, for instance, if I look at this presidential election, the issue, like, why are people on the right constantly talking just in our own language about what we're supposed to do to defeat Democrats? So we have, Huckabee talking about a tax plan. We have Trump talking about the border, this, that, and the other thing, all these issues, just quote-unquote issues. But what the left's main tactic is division. And nobody on the right actually attacks them directly. We're sort of in our bubble thinking that people, resonate with these boring ideas about taxes and whatever. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense to me, and I think that you're right. I talk to a lot of conservatives who don't sometimes, and for lack of a better word, kind of get what we're doing to ourselves, right? So it's almost like we have an autoimmune disease, and we're attacking ourselves, and our body is attacking itself sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my sister ended up on a plane ride with a guy who's a state senator from Tennessee, and I was kind of excited about that because I thought, oh, great, here's somebody somewhat influential who can read my book. And he wrote to me and was asking, he said he would read it and so on and so forth. And when I wrote back, I said, okay, great. Well, if this is, if I have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's actually in politics, like directly with some power, like I'm waiting for the unity candidate from the Republicans. And I know this might sound like just a crazy kind of off the wall conversation between two people, but like when you start getting into the ideas about ideology, you're going to see that we're missing the boat when we keep talking about these petty little back and forth political issues instead of the big picture, which is, I mean, I don't know if I'm losing the people in the audience or what. I'm not looking at the chat, but I guess the point is that these are big concepts, and we as people on the right, we're missing the big picture. And that's why it's kind of fun to sort of wander into this, strange, uncharted territory of like, how do we think about how we think big picture, and how do we think about how they think about big picture? And the book is really excellent at clarifying how it all works.
Right, clarifying what it is to be conservative, clarifying their point, their position from our point of view, almost, right? Is what you were going after to get the reader to understand what it means to be conservative.
Yeah.
Or what yeah.
I don't know how much time we have left in this segment, but I mean, I could try to tell you what I think the basic difference is between the left and the right.
Well, it looks like to me you've got about 8 or 9 minutes.
Oh, well,
or at least 7. So I think you got time.
Yeah, it can get kind of circular when you get into these deeper issues, but I think, the basic difference between the left and the right is that they see everything as being unequal based on how life turns out for people, and they want to correct that. We see things as how they're unequal based on your political rights, which, are defined by the Constitution, or going even further back to the Age of Enlightenment when these political rights were, discovered, basically.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's so predictable, like everything that they say, do, post, what Hillary Clinton does, what some idiot on Facebook says in a group, is because they're going to always sort of like find the I forget the term, but they're gonna find the quickest way to find out what's different about people and wedge it in between them so they can create division. The ideology is basically premised on the concept of division because division creates power. And when you can create power over people, that's when you stop having political equality. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I think that's a great point. We see justice in terms of opportunity, and they see justice in terms of the end. How do you end up in life?
Yeah, well, they see justice in terms of how they can be the ones who decide what justice is.
Well,
and
yeah,
we
that's
have completely different ideas about justice, which are, where does justice come from? And it comes from nature.
So,
AKA natural law.
So then, how that leads to some pretty. And you mentioned something to me about the big guy, little guy effect, and you might not be able to finish this. You still probably got about 5 minutes, but at least start explaining the big guy, little guy effect. You alluded to it earlier, but kind of deep dive into that.
Okay. Well, think of any story in the news, like Ferguson, for instance. How do you think that we're split up between the big guys and the little guys when we're all supposed to be screaming at each other about Ferguson? White people, black people. Right?
Right, absolutely. Even in their own community, the people who were store owners, even if they were from the neighborhood, they were victims. They were targets.
Well, true, but the media aren't going to talk about that because that's not part of the narrative. I mean, the name of the book is called The End of Prejudice, and the reason that it's called that is because if you want to turn the left-wing ideology into sort of like a mathematical equation, it would say liberalism is a prejudice in favor of the little guy and against the big guy. So when you have prejudice, that means you associate all of these actions of individual people with groups. So in the case of our black social identity in America, they're perceived to be the underdog. Therefore, there's a prejudice in favor of anything that they do. So you get a guy like Mike Brown who goes and beats up a store owner and then tries to attack or kill or whatever he did to a cop, and he's completely wrong. What you're going to find is that everyone who's liberal left-wing is going to have a huge prejudice for this person. So the technical definition of prejudice is actually really key to how they operate. And it's going to be the same thing with pretty much every issue. And it's always going to be about group identities, It's something that Rush Limbaugh talks about. They all talk about it. These are the group identities. They're either good or they're bad, like digital or binary, And
binary is probably a good analogy. Yeah, binary is probably a really good way to put it because that that is probably what we're trying to get at the heart at, that there's a prejudice on both sides toward one or the other, and with every event that happens, a prejudice on both sides is created. That's what you're saying, right?
No, actually, do you really think that there's a prejudice among conservatives about what happened in Ferguson?
No, that I thought. No, I think there's a prejudice that's created out of the situation. No, I don't think there's a prejudice. What I thought you were saying is that there's automatic assumptions on either side.
No, the right are accused of being prejudiced all the time, but we're actually, speaking for myself at least, completely the opposite. And Ferguson's a nice, easy example, so it's okay to stick with it. But look at all the information that the people on the left are just throwing out of the conversation. They're there isn't really a better word to describe, ignoring the all these investigations and all the media accounts than prejudice. I made a video today, or I finished it, and it shows like all of this information that the left just throw out of the equation. And I think one of the nice things about defining their ideology as being prejudiced is that you cannot have a rational conversation with these people because they reject so much information, and I think that's basically how it all can be described as being prejudiced.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a great clarification, and I wasn't trying to challenge you, but you clarified it for me, and I think you definitely clarified it for the audience that it does the coverage definitely, but even just the perception of the general public is a little bit off and a little bit prejudiced. I mean, that there's already, because of the narrative that's created, there's also this kind of, I'm going to get on your side, right? So we're picking sides. We're choosing sides.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We're picking sides of social identity groups. We're not actually looking at events and facts and information. So therefore, information is being discarded, and that makes people stupid, and that's why we go crazy when we talk to liberals, because they have far less information than we do.
I think that's a great way to end this segment. So let's pick up from there. You mentioned a video that you put out today. You put out a video the other day that we tweeted, and I want you to talk a little bit about that kind of work that you do so that these guys are watching for it. And we're going to cut to our break, and then we'll come back with Kelvin, and he'll tell us a little bit more about what he's doing, and we'll wrap up this conversation on prejudice and where it's coming from.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hung over from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
And a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
Abolish the IRS. Take all 125,000 IRS agents and put them on our southern border.
That's us, that's right. Gotta love this American ride. Both ends of the ozone burning. Funny how the world keeps turning. Look, Mom, no hands. I love this American ride. Gotta love this American ride.
All right, we're back with Kelvin. How are you, Kelvin?
Hey.
So I hope I didn't wear you out too much intellectually trying to explain all that. Just to get to what we already knew is true, but you take a different look at it, right? So we know that the media is biased, right?
For sure.
And you take a different kind of approach to it, and you go out all the way out to say they're prejudiced. There's a prejudice that's there, and they're creating a general narrative, general prejudice among people who don't know any better.
Yes, and it's pretty easy to do, because we all want to stick up for the little guy. And that's what the narrative really is. It's, people say, oh, liberalism is emotion-driven. Well, as I stated before, if you wanted to put it into a formula, liberalism is a prejudice in favor of the little guy and against the big guy. So it works because it draws on these heartstrings, sort of a way to create control by seeming benevolent. But yeah, and the media loves that because it's really all about feeling superior to people. And if you're on the right side of a particular emotional argument, you must be better.
Yes, and it is about it's always seemed that way to me too, and so I guess that's what you found as well, is that it is about feeling superior and feeling better because you feel like you're standing up for the little guy, right? You're better than everybody else because you're standing up for the little guy.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Which is, there's something fundamentally wrong with that, I think, that people need to get their security from. Do you think that there's, and this is an off-topic question, I'm sorry to throw this at you, but do you think maybe that there's something that we've lost in our society and we're trying to replace it with that? Or do you think that we're just brainwashed? And not about you and me, but, just in general. Do you think that people are easily manipulated because they've been taught to be that way? Is there some independence lost, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the situation, and I think it's fair to go back to the Mike Brown situation, there is two sets of realities. There's our reality, and there's sort of like, you could say, the left-wing reality. And if we've been conditioned to feel good about sticking up for the little guy, and if the little guy is this group and not an actual human being or a set of human beings, then we've washed all this rational information out of the equation. So if you have ideas that make you discard information, you're brainwashed. And I know that wouldn't go over too well when I talk to liberals, but, they're brainwashed. Sad to say, along with much of our culture.
Yeah, and I think that's somewhere where you and Dr. Arrington would agree. I don't know if you can see the chat room. If you're using the app, mine is down. So the audience didn't get quiet. They're still talking. But if you're using the phone app, I can't see them. I don't know if you can or not. If they're asking, shoot me a question if they're asking a question, Jared. But Dr. Randy Arrington is definitely in there agreeing with what you're saying. I do know that much. So you talk about the big guy, little. You have a really great explanation. I don't want you to give too much of your book away because I really want people to go and read it, and I do intend to, but I just don't read as fast as we got you on the show. But I want you to talk about the videos and things that you do. You did one last week that you sent us, and we tweeted that out. And so talk about that. Talk about that one first, because this is the kind of thing that our audience loves. They live on Twitter, and they love to take stuff like you're doing. So we're going to repeat your Twitter handle at the end as well. They love to take stuff like that and tweet it out and share it. So tell us about that video.
Well, that video actually was only uploaded about an hour before the show. So I would probably just have to cut and paste it into chat room, and I'll try to do that before the show is over. But I'm not world famous or anything. I'm doing what I can do at this point to get attention for the book. Maybe one thing that people could do would be to look at some of the reviews, which are all pretty much unanimously like, holy cow, okay, I get it now. And I think that is probably the value. I know that we're talking about stuff that we can kind of relate to, and it might even sound like, oh yeah, I've heard this before kind of stuff. But for most of the people that I engage with on the right who talk about politics, they just don't get it. It's not clicking. They're frustrated. They're angry. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to engage with the other side. They think they're crazy. And for the people who have read the book completely, it's like the lights start to go on for them. And I guess I could post the reviews there.
You're actually hitting on something that has come up in conversation with some friends of mine, probably just in the last few weeks. But I'm not sure. I think your book probably closes the loop on the conversation better than we've been able to in conversation. And that's one reason that I'm really anxious to read it. I wish I could have gotten into it before the show. I think it probably closes the loop on that. How do we talk to these people?
For me, I think it was a process of first seeing the pattern, like why we're divided up the way, why all the groups are divided up the way they are. And then I saw, okay, well, it's because you can gain power by making black people hate white people, or all of the, endless variations of that same theme, because it's all one theme. And then I studied the Enlightenment, and I studied where America came from, and I studied why we are all equal, and why the philosophers of that period had to come up, or just simply did come up as at the time with the idea of, okay, why are we all equal? Which, ended up being the foundation for the Constitution. And speaking of, closing the circle, it made perfect sense that these people think that they are superior to us or to whoever. And, that also kind of closes the circle on what have we lost culturally? Well, we've lost tons of education about Western philosophical legacy. People aren't taught the Constitution, let alone where it came from. And I don't know.
That kind of answers my question about, how did we get here? What have we lost? I think that, that you said your book talks about what we've lost culturally, what we've lost in education, I had a long conversation with my father over the weekend about, kids not learning history anymore, or not the important parts of it. The important parts of it are being wiped away.
Yeah.
Yeah, by that big guy, little guy thing.
Yeah.
Right.
By that feeling of self-importance. It goes into so many things. It's really interesting to watch. Like, only a few days ago, I think it finally kind of hit me ideologically, like why giving every kid a trophy is just so destructive to their outlook on future life, because it's sort of like, okay, well, the bad kids are just as good as the good kids, but in order to make myself feel good and make them feel good, everyone's equal. And it's this, I almost said a swear word, but it's this really bad and perverted version. It's this perverted version of equality that is the driving force between what makes people on the left think. No, I want to be in control of who's equal, so I'll feel nice about myself. And then, when you get to the end of it, hello, communism.
Exactly. Meanwhile, they make sure that no one ever earns anything starting from, the time they're a child, but everybody earns everything, and click. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's not just, yeah.
And it is a circle. And I know that this has been sort of an abstract conversation, but that's what was fun about writing the book and like realizing all of these things, is that actually left-wing and right-wing ideology actually do fit into each other if you understand why half of us go to one side and half go to the other. But you can bridge the gap with certain concepts, but I think only we can do it, because they obviously are too far gone to be able to handle anything like that, and they would have no interest in it. I mean, they just want to control everything.
And the interesting thing about the narrative is that I talk to a lot of people when you boil down, I've had conversations with other conservatives, when you boil down to the issues and ask them how they feel, they don't realize they're conservative. Their views are, 80-20 at least conservative, but they don't identify that way, which I think is fascinating. We do have a question from Jim in the chat room. How are there two realities? And I think
there are
might
two different objectives.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I guess I think there are two different objectives. And one of the things that I do in the book is to sort of try to put yourself in the position of who you were when you were young. And, when we're young, we're all sort of the same. And, it's just about, okay, who gets to play with the ball, or, who gets to be this character in this TV show, and we make up a make-believe game. But, as we, deep inside what people are thinking, they are constructing their realities about life, and that starts to manifest itself as you get older. And I think that for me, my goal was to just be fair about everything in a completely different way as them. And for them, I think they think they're right and they think they're good. Therefore, they think that gives them the license to construct the entire society. And for me, and for all of you guys, I think the value system is, okay, I think I want to be right. Therefore, I need to be fair about everything. But it's not up to me to control what people do. And that branches off into how we all become ideological as older people. And, for people on the right, that turns into things like, okay, what are equal rights and what's fair, and let's look at situations individually. And then for them, it just morphs. And then, I have these friends who've turned into crazy people, and they think all of these things that aren't true because they've sort of early on in the process decided, well, I'm right, so,
Right.
I don't know. It's different realities, I guess. Well, then, if that answers his question.
It kind of did for me, and Jim, sound off in the chat room if that didn't answer your question, but I'm sure it probably did. But the last thing you said about them turning into crazy people, it really struck me, because I can remember hearing so many things out of any number of people and going, why do you think that? And the answers are just all over the place. And oftentimes is, well, I don't know. And I can't imagine thinking anything and not knowing why I think that.
Yeah.
That's my
concept. And I didn't try to get in.
And maybe you go.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you.
Well, I didn't get too deep into trying to put people that I knew, because one of the big chapters in the book is sort of like, what happened to these people that I used to know? I don't go, full psychiatrist and try to figure out what made them do it specifically, but I did come to the realization that at some point they thought that they were so much better than everyone else that it was okay for them to just sort of treat society like this board game that they get to control everybody on. And then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And now they think that Mike Brown is innocent, or, whatever.
Do you think especially, if you're on Twitter as much as we are, you get a lot of vitriol from the other side. So, we're constantly attacked. Do you think that's why they feel so empowered? Or is that just a means to an end?
I guess just a means to an end, probably.
Yeah.
I think that it's sort of like bad behavior begets more bad behavior. So here we are in year 7 of Obama's presidency, and it's just sort of like, wow. I remember there was some team of soldiers that were lost in South America somewhere, and they came back a few years into Obama's administration. They were like, "What happened?" And so it just keeps getting worse unless there's a way to intervene. It's sort of like, well.
So it probably is the emboldened. You know, they feel empowered. They feel emboldened at this moment, and that's why we see the frustration, because we feel it getting a little bit out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've given us a lot of reasons to read your book. Is there anything that you know you want to add? Any last thoughts about, you know, that we've missed in our circular kind of crazy conversation that we've had, that I know our chat room has loved, and I wish I could see it. Final thoughts? I mean, things that we missed, salient points that you'd like to make. If I had scripted the interview better, I probably would have made them already. I think it's kind of interesting that we just ended up having a really kind of interesting conversation. I wonder if the people in this chat on the on the chat room would agree. I'll take a peek. Yeah, let us know if you thought our circular conversation was interesting.
Yeah, but very, very interesting. No, I don't think anything. No exclamation point at this point. I'll stick a link up or two on the link on the chat board, and hopefully they were interested enough that they will buy it, because I would surely love that.
Yes, and I don't know. I will say that though I wasn't able to read your book, I was able to read some of your blogs, and of course, you know, I was excited about interviewing you because my first perception was, wow, I really agree with this guy, and I love to interview people that I agree with. The other thing was they're very well written, so I definitely encourage everyone to give the book a try, and why don't you tell everybody where they can get it?
Yeah, perfect. www.endofprejudice.com.
And it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, you can buy the book. You can look at some reviews if you don't believe that it's great. I think there's some articles up there, yada, yada. But yeah, endofprejudice.com. And my name is Kelvin Smythe. And if I was going to finish up the interview without taking too much of the rest of your time, you know, we got to talk about the presidential election for a minute.
Oh,
30
go
seconds.
for it. Yeah, we'll go up I'll give you, I've got 3 minutes left, and I'll give you a whole minute and a half of it.
Oh, I don't know, actually. Maybe we should just act. It's too bewildering. Trump.
I know. Maybe we'll save
Just
that for
say Trump.
next time. If you want to have another circular conversation, we could bring you on and have another one about the presidential conversation, or the presidential race. So yeah, we could you could come back and we could have another conversation about that. So Kelvin, we really loved having you, and I'd love to have you back. And it was an interesting conversation to me, and that's kind of what we like to have here, and get the chat room an opportunity to talk, and you can look back at it when we get off, because it's hard to follow and answer questions at the same time. Next week we've got a Polita Bunny, and that'll be fun. I had to go out and get a new chainsaw so that I could keep up with her, but I think I'll be all right. We'll probably have some conversations about Twitter trolls. Stay tuned for JD and Stacy next on K98 Talk, and we'll see you next week, Patriots. Keep rising.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.